thank you for making the effort. I know it's Thursday, lots of great parties last night. Really appreciate you guys being here. We're going to go through some principles around how you build AI applications, but then we're going to focus primarily on how do you use those with the Azure Stack family of devices. So I have some great co-presenters. We're going to go through a lot of material. As with any of these sessions, there's way more that we can cover than the time allots, but it's primarily about answering your questions. So please feel free to shout questions as you're going through, and we'll try to leave some space at the end. My name is Henry Jerez. I lead Intelligent Edge Solutions Group, and we specialize on working with partners and customers to try to bring AI solutions for you. Today, we're going to be talking about how you build those solutions. And in our line of business, we actually focus on 5 particular verticals for this. Retail, manufacturing, energy, government, and finance. Of course, each of them have different possible ways in which you can use AI. You have great examples of how to leverage AI downstairs in the Intel retail booth demo. And we're actually going to go about how we went about building that demo in a little bit of detail here. Manufacturing, we have a lot of opportunities for detecting failures, for optimizing processes. In energy, we're helping with identifying oil wells and being able to run that AI closer to the edge. We just made a big announcement earlier in the year with Schlumberger. Finance, we're doing a lot of fraud detection. We're helping secure the transactions. And of course, in government, you've seen a lot of the work that we've been doing for disaster relief and also security. So as you build an application for any of these verticals, how do you go about it? In this particular case of AI, you start with a model. Now, the advantage is that working with Azure, you have the ability to choose between 3 different types of models. You can just go with a pre-built model, which is a cognitive service. You can go with an Azure machine learning trained model on the cloud, or you can even build a third-party model, bring it, license it. We have a marketplace for modules that you can leverage. So you're welcome to come with any type of model that you like. Now, once you have this model, you go into the creation of these applications. This is the moment where you integrate this model with other Azure services. And depending on which of our products you're using, you will have more or less Azure services that are going to enhance your application development. You can go all the way from Azure Functions, which are basically common to everyone, and get as elaborate as app services if you're working with Hub. You get all of these components together, and you're ready then to deploy that application. When you do deployment, there is a lot of thought that has been put into optimizing that deployment so that it's as consistent as possible and as seamless as possible. We'll talk about this in a little bit more detail. And you have the ability to go into highly available environments as well as directly to IoT devices. Now, you've deployed the model. The next step is to monitor it. And with announcements we've made during this week, you can do this monitoring both at the local level, at the on-prem level, or the cloud level, thanks to Arc. And you're able to aggregate the signals, and in many cases, even collect more data for your AI models to make them better. And we'll actually go through this process today. So just by a raise of hands, how many of you actually develop applications? Oh, great. We're in good company. How many of you deploy applications? Excellent. And how many of you are just managing these applications on the edge? Okay, a little less on that. That's great because we have a lot. Oh, well, we'll talk about that too. But we're going to talk a lot about how do you build and deploy these applications, and we'll see examples of how you go about doing this. So as I mentioned, there are many types of devices that we have available, and there's different functionality. So let's try to reason through them. You've probably seen this slide in other presentations. It goes all the way from massive computing power on the cloud to the smallest and most nimble systems on the edge. So what's common is in the parlance of artificial intelligence, there's 3 operations that you will do, right? There's inferencing, which is just the ability of running these models, whether you built them or somebody else did. There is training and management of those models, which is you creating or improving those models. And then there's the deployment and development management for those modules turned into applications that are being deployed. In the cloud, we have a bunch of options on how you can do that. Cognitive services, Azure machine learning. We leverage Onyx runtime for execution. You can even use Databricks for training if you want. But as you move into this continuum, you would see that the inferencing, training, and data capabilities start to lower. The common thread is that Azure storage continuum that allows you to move data back and forth, and you decide where that data stops. But because you have less capacity in a hub, you can still do inferencing and training, but only a subset of those training services are available to you. And you still have the full range of deployment and development management. When you go into our newest entrant into the family, the Azure Stack Edge, this hardware as a service solution actually is primarily geared towards inferencing and a little bit of training happening as part of the cognitive services themselves. It's not really a training solution, it's more of an inference solution. It's nimble, super powerful, and a great way to get the data out. You notice that there is that loop below that's leveraging Stream Analytics and Databox Gateway to send your information back up. When you go to something like Stack HCI, you're basically in the same space. And as you get into the lower systems, there's really no capacity for training at all, and the inferencing and data capacity reduces. So you're doing the absolute minimum inferencing, and you're mostly capturing data to send to the next level. Now, that's our differentiator in this entrance. When you come to Azure, you can get to deploy and manage all of these applications and train them all the way from the cloud, and you have great endpoints like Azure Stack Edge or IoT Edge devices. You can also do this on premises with an Azure Stack Hub. You decide where your data lives. You decide where the AI is being executed and how we go about delivering that value for your customers. So it's completely a composable story. Think of it almost like a Russian doll of solutions that you go building. So with this in mind, let's talk about the platform component. So I'm going to invite Chris here to tell us more about how we go.
So we talk in the Azure Stack family, especially today, about two main devices. And the first is Azure Stack Edge. Azure Stack Edge is a device. It's an appliance from Microsoft. The current form factor is a one-use server. There's other form factors coming soon. We've talked about those some at this conference. And what it does is it allows you to sort of take a small bit of Azure and run it locally. So you have a little server, or you have the server that runs at your location, but it's all controlled and managed from the cloud. It has built-in hardware acceleration for machine learning. It does edge computing sort of locally with either VMs or containers. Those containers can be through Kubernetes or IoT Edge. It's an Azure managed appliance. And it has, Henry talked about that storage gateway for moving data up and back from the cloud. And really what it allows you to do is it allows you to run sort of machine learning at the edge. It allows you to do edge compute and IoT solutions. And it allows you to sort of have sort of a pipeline for your data to sort of manage it when you have data generated locally and you want to sort of operate on it and reason across it and run machine learning or AI across it, and then get the results of that processing kind of up to the cloud or the data to the cloud for further use. So really, it's an extension of the Azure cloud. That's the right way to think about it. Azure Stack Hub is the other sort of device we're going to talk about today a lot. And Azure Stack Hub allows you to have, in essence, your own private Azure cloud, which is great. So you get a rack of servers. They run locally at your location. You have an Azure portal where you can locally sort of define all the things you want about running those things in Azure. It does have connections up to the Azure clouds. There are some services that run in the Azure cloud that help you sort of to manage it or run it. And then also some of the services sort of work in concert across the cloud and local. But the real key is that you get sort of a local device that has sort of the power of Azure at your location. So with that, you have your autonomous cloud. You have sort of consistent development platforms. So Henry will later talk about how you can use ARM deployments in both Azure Cloud and on Azure Hub or Azure Stack Hub, which is great. And then you have sort of many of the Azure services you're used to on premises instead of just in the cloud. And so it sort of leads to sort of a lot of these environments where you want to be able to run sort of very full feature-rich applications locally. And that's where we talk about the things we're talking about today, where you especially might want to do training or things like that at the edge. So what's really interesting is there's lots of ways to fit all these pieces together. There's a lot going on in this slide, but most of that is just to kind of get across the idea that there's a lot of things that you can do. So, you start sort of from the basics, which is that you have the Azure cloud, and the Azure cloud, you can have devices out in the world, including IoT edge devices or sort of, your IoT devices. They just connect directly to Azure cloud, and away you go. But when you want to start putting sort of what we talk about as like this sort of server class hardware out at the edge and run it locally, that's when you can sort of insert Azure Stack Edge talking to Azure Cloud and on the devices. So Azure Stack Edge can be like at your location. And then similarly, because Azure Stack Hub is bringing IoT Hub, or is IoT Hub in preview, right? You can have Azure Stack Hub at your location and have those devices sort of connecting to it. And then another thing that we have coming soon is the ability to hook up Azure Stack Edge to Azure Stack Hub. So you can imagine that Azure Stack Hub at some level that Azure Stack Edge at some level is sort of this device which connects up to the Azure cloud as its control plane. Because Azure Stack Hub is kind of your own private cloud, it could be the thing that controls Azure Stack Edge as well. And so that's something that we're working on. It's coming soon. We'll actually show you a little bit of that today, just kind of like show you the progress there. And then, of course, you can start to sort of combine all these together, right? Like as I mentioned, like the cloud can can talk with the hub, and then the cloud to the hub to the edge. And I don't want to get into all of this stuff, and I can see a couple of kind of pondering faces, like what's going on with all this. And the point of this is just to sort of talk about that these are very flexible, composable solutions that you can kind of combine together in lots of ways. And we'll reference some of this stuff later in the session. So now that you have these solutions and you are looking to build something on top of them, we can talk about what things you build there, or how you build those things. And so one of the things that we talked about, so Azure Stack Edge this week announced many new compute platforms to run on Azure Stack Edge. So these are all sort of coming soon. So the IoT part is today, but the other piece is you'll have the ability to run Kubernetes, or you'll have the ability to run virtual machines on Azure Stack Edge. And similarly on Hub, right, you have IoT Hub in preview, you have virtual machines are there. Azure Kubernetes Service is, remind me, is it preview or is that?
Sorry?
Azure Kubernetes Service is in preview?
GA.
GA, that's right. And then Kubernetes, you can run Kubernetes as well on Azure Stack Hub through OpenShift. And then when you talk about management, right, because this is the thing, right? When you have, it's one thing to have things that are deployed down to the edge, but then you sort of have to manage and deploy them and run them. And so all of these tools have the ability to sort of manage what's happening on them. And with Stack Hub, like we talked about, there's that local portal, so you can do a lot of your management in the local portal. And then also you can have Azure Arc be involved, and the IoT Hub locally for management. And Stack Edge, as I said, is sort of managed from the cloud, managed from its control plane. So you can manage the underlying device through its resource in Azure, and then you can manage sort of the workloads through Azure Arc and Azure IoT Hub. For AI tools, since we're talking, excuse me, since we're talking about sort of AI today, right? Both of the appliances have built-in AI tools. So Azure Stack Edge has built-in hardware acceleration. Azure Stack Hub has hardware acceleration coming in preview soon. And then both have sort of Azure ML built-in, or Azure ML tools, and support sort of a wide variety of, kind of all of the, they support all of the sort of libraries and AI systems that you'd expect, especially as we bring GPUs to both platforms, which are coming soon. And then the services is something I think is really interesting. So when we talk about building and deploying these things, like, we give you a platform, right? We give you a place to sort of deploy your virtual machines or your containers. We give you a way to deploy those in a reasonable way. And then we want to also help you out with how to make your apps easier to write. And so one of the things that Azure does is we have edge versions of Azure services, right? So a variety of Azure services have edge versions that you can use to deploy or build your apps around. And then also, and so those run on both Azure Stack Edge and Azure Stack Hub. Both devices have sort of local storage. Azure Stack Edge has this cloud storage gateway for transferring storage up to its cloud, right? And then Azure Stack Hub has, ignore the typo on the slide, has Azure Foundational Services, which is sort of a variety of Azure services that are available locally. So the things you might expect, like databases and virtual machines and things like that. So when we talk about Stack Hub, this is what I was saying, there's all these services that are available, and particularly the ones that are valuable for building these kinds of AI solutions. So Stack Hub has many of these Azure services, stream analytics functions, app services, service fabric, event hubs, like there's more as well. Databases are there as well. And then with Stack Edge, some of those key Azure services like Azure Functions to sort of do reactions to data and information, stream analytics to sort of analyze streams as they come through, and then the IoT Edge runtime runs there as a way to sort of manage and control local IoT devices. And then the AI resources, I think, are where things really shine here. And I really want to highlight cognitive services, which is such a great tool for when you're doing especially prototyping and development of AI applications, because it allows you to get sort of this containerized version of pre-trained models that do sort of great things. So some of the demos that we've written for Azure Stack Edge, for example, we just take cognitive services and use OCR tools to get text out of images. I mean, it finds all kinds of text we didn't expect. Or use them to sort of recognize people or objects in images, sort of things like that you can do without having to train anything and just use sort of an API in a local container. And then, of course, you get into Azure ML for doing sort of more advanced training, and an Onyx runtime allows you to run sort of your own models sort of locally. So I do want to talk about, or I'm going to introduce Milan to talk about one of these new services that we're really excited to bring to this area.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. So one of the challenges that we hear from customers often is, hey, I have cameras all over my business facility. I want to utilize the signal from that to drive my business apps. But for those of you who have tried to build applications which read data from a camera, analyze it, and do stuff with it, you know that it is hard maintaining and operating a media pipeline of that sort. So what we are offering via live video analytics is the ability for you to compose a pipeline without worrying about the media pipeline details. You will provide us a JSON representation of a media graph, which will consist of sources, processors, and sink. And we will run that graph for you. So what that looks like as an example, like a very basic graph would be something like this. So here you have a RTSP source, RTSP being the protocol of choice for IP cameras, a motion detection processor, and an asset sync. An asset sync here means that the ability for you to record video clips when something interesting is happening. And based on a graph like this, you can build a hybrid app which looks like this. So you are able to direct the motion detection signals to IoT Hub from where you can read it in your own application and make some business decisions out of it. You can log it to a database or say that, hey, I want to actually record a clip of 30 seconds, 2 minutes, or whatever logic you want to have. Now, this is a very basic graph. This is a starting point for us. But really, the power comes in is in a graph like this, which will be shipping very soon. Now, here what you see is the ability for you to bring your own ML models that you have built, which is custom to your business, and us running the media pipeline and selecting frames and sending it to that ML model for inferencing purposes. And then we will take the inferencing data back and route it to the appropriate Azure service. So again, here you are not focused on the media pipeline. You focus on your ML model, you compose the pipeline, and we run it for you. And this is what a media graph looks like as an example. So in this, you can see that there is a RTSP source where it takes the RTSP URL along with the credentials. And then you see the list of processors, which were there on the previous slide. If there's a processor for reading the frames, selecting the frames, and then directing it to your ML model, for which you are providing us a reference point. Now, one thing I'll point out in the previous slide again is the decoder is in a dotted box over here. So there are things in the graph which we will automatically inference based on what you're giving us, and we will inject that. You won't even have to worry about it. So you really focus on tell me what you want to do, and we will take care of executing it for you. So that's the power of this platform that's upcoming. It's available for limited preview, so please sign up, and we look forward to feedback from you. I'm going to hand this over back to Henry. Henry.
Great, thank you, Milan. So that's actually a really exciting development because most of our customers spend a significant amount of time just trying to figure out what's the right pipeline and how to select it and get it connected. We're trying to ease that process, lower the barrier of entry, definitely there. So very quickly, now you know that how you go about building an application, but how do you deploy it? There are a few patterns here that I'm going to describe. The first one is you can always go with an IoT Hub-based deployment. So you have IoT Hub running on the cloud, you package you create your container, you get that into a container registry, and then it's IoT Hub that's responsible for deploying that either to Stack or Edge. You can go Kubernetes-based. In that context, you do the same process. You create these containers, whether using the tool that Milan has mentioned or your own. You register them, and then you have two options. You can go directly through kubectl and Kubernetes to deploy to these platforms, or you can use the new AKS engine service in Azure Stack Hub to be able to do that just for Azure Stack Hub. So far, very compelling solutions for containers, but can you do these also with VMs and non-containerized deployments? Yes, you can. And you would do that with an ARM template. You go about creating that ARM template. You can create it in the cloud. You have the same tools available on Azure Stack Hub. You put all of the components as part of the ARM template. You give it to ARM running on Azure Stack Hub, and it will deploy the application for you. And we just introduced this week. You can also do now an Arc deployment. So same behavior, create your container, register it, give it to Arc, and Arc will work either with a pure Kubernetes implementation or an AKS engine-based deployment and reach these platforms. So lots of opportunities for you to get the deployment going. But when you express this deployment, it's rare that you have a single container deployment. Many times you're talking about multiple containers. And you might actually be looking to deploy these to more than one location. That's where the cloud-native application bundles come. This, we talked about this a couple of months back. It allows you to create a definition for an application that has all the dependencies contained within, and then leverage a service to deploy that application. That service happens to be called Porter. You use Porter either for publishing that application and its dependencies, or also for executing and installing it through the Porter installation. That Porter component will pull all of the resources required, and then it will contact the different components, whether you're using ARM, you're using instances of AKS, or you're setting up databases, and it will lay it out for you. Everything happens automatically. So nothing best than seeing these things in action. So we're going to switch now to a couple of demos, and my friend Chris here is going to show you how you go about using this.
So when we start with the demo, I just want to start with kind of like this idea of like, we talked about a lot of different options for how things can work. And so before we get into the demo, I'm just going to talk about what's in this demo. So the first step is the architecture that we're talking about is the cloud to Azure Stack Edge to devices. We're going to use IoT Edge as the way that things get deployed to it. The cloud storage gateway that is built into Azure Stack Edge is part of this. And then also the video analytics pipeline that Milan mentioned is an Azure Edge service that we're going to use here. So let me switch over. 6. OK, so first thing we're going to talk about is Henry talked about Porter. And so overall, with Porter, it's this kind of system that lets you kind of declaratively say what your application should be, and the cloud native application bundles, right? And kind of wrap all that up. And it lets deployment be really easy. And there's lots of different ways to sort of script deployments. But in this case, right, what we've done is we've sort of created this sort of declarative script of what's in the deployment, or how to deploy this application, and then we just sort of run this Porter command, which will sort of, essentially it sort of has that script and the Porter piece sort of bundled up into a container, and it runs that container, which kind of causes the script to run, And here we can see it executed successfully, and it sort of deployed all the pieces that we needed to deploy. Now, I will say that the deployment takes a few minutes, so I'm going to do the sort of cooking show maneuver, where I'm going to switch to a machine that was pre-deployed. But we just want to talk about the way that deployment is super easy here. So here I have a sort of in the Azure portal, right, a cloud view of my Azure Stack Edge device. And overall, what happens is, so we have the modules that we talked about that are running, and so we have actually Milan's module here, as well as also we've plugged in the thing he talked about, where we've plugged in our own container. In this case, we're using just a generic YOLO container. And what's going to happen is, I am going to start on a different machine. I'm going to start a video stream, right? And so that's just because instead of having an actual camera, we're going to have this video stream that's going to run. And the video that's going to run is we are driving a car, right? We're driving a car around, and the car is filming what's happening around it. And what we want to do is we want to collect that video, and then we want to sort of use what's in that video to sort of train models, like maybe we're training an autonomous vehicle. We want to sort of label what's happening there. And so this car, but we get this same problem that when you talk about overall driving around, or when you have a video, maybe what's happening in the video is mostly not things of cars, not the things that you want. But every now and then, right, you have the thing that you want. So now we have some cars in the frame. And so what happens is that the module that Milan talked about is reading that video stream that I started a moment ago. It is giving frames to our container, right, to our YOLO container. The YOLO container is saying what it sees and what it doesn't see, and if it sees cars or not. And then the actual module itself is popping out the frames where it's detected something. And so you'll see these here were generated just a moment ago. Note the time change. This machine's on West Coast time. And and so you can see here we have a cars detected, right? But what we don't have is we don't have sort of all of those frames at the start where sort of cars weren't detected. And so this process sort of allows us to sort of, like I said, it's that very simple, easy way to sort of pull the pieces together that you need to kind of have that video pipeline, pull the video in, sort of do the analysis that you want in the video, make the business decisions that you want, and then and then push that up. So this share that I'm looking at here is a share that's on the actual Azure Stack Edge device. These images then all get uploaded to the Azure cloud. Additionally, we can send in metadata about the frames that we saw or the things. So you have all this information that's available in the cloud for sort of further retraining or further use. And so there's still cranking out. So now Henry is going to show the next version of this.
That's right. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. You want to switch back?
Yeah. So what Chris just showed us is actually a real use case. We have a lot of companies now building self-driving cars. And what they're doing is they have these fleets of cars capturing this information, and they don't want to have to upload all these petabytes of data just because. There's only so many frames I need of a road. They can easily be simulated. The cars and this randomness of humans actually getting in the frame is what's important. Now, many of these partners want to perform this training locally. They don't want to send it to the cloud. So in this context, what we look at is basically an Azure Stack Hub interfacing with an Azure Stack Edge and with those cameras, getting the deployments, and we're going to be using virtual machines here. So we're going to deploy an application here that will be able to help us label and retrain with virtual machines. We'll use IoT Hub to communicate with Azure Stack Edge, be able to collect that information. And we have Azure services and a particular partner service built by a company called Linker. So what this allows us to do is that we can go back and now go to an Azure Stack system. And let me log in. I've been away too long. So what you're seeing right now is an Azure Stack system. So there's all the resources. This happens to have Kubernetes clusters. But what's interesting is you can actually now create new resources. And as part of those new resources, you have the ability to have this Azure Stack Edge systems that you would attach. And now for the purposes of the demo, we have already done this. So we happen to have an Stack Edge deployment here. Very similar experience to the one that Chris was showing you from the cloud. This happens to be running on an Azure Stack Hub, though, and it also has shares. And this one is actually sending its data to this training blob that we have here in running on Azure Stack Hub. So we actually get to go to the dashboard and look what's happening on that blob service that we just looked at. And you will see that as we move into the blob itself, we have that car images blob here, and you have the images that Chris has been generating. He's been uploading it. Now, so these are only the relevant images, once again. That all the Azure Stack Edge took care of removing the irrelevant images. But what can we do with it? We can actually now go to Linker. Linker has this application. And we're going to do the car detection module. And what it's doing is it's loading those images. See the images that are being processed. And what I can do is I can actually turn on the annotations here, and we're going to see what the system is being able to do. Now notice that because this is running with the Power on an Azure Stack Hub system, has several GPUs, it has a lot of compute available to it, it actually has way more information than what we are able to see in the local model. Like we're able to detect traffic signs, even better detection of car systems, but there's always the possibility that something will be missed, like we missed that sign there. Whether it's relevant or not, it'll be important to have it ready. So you can actually go and edit here. You can literally go and drive and continue to edit the components here and say, I actually care about this information. And when you do that, this is not a car. When you do that, say this one here, you will be able to add that additional component, and the system will be able to retrain with that information. And there's a lot of categories and objects that you have available, of course, and that will generate a retraining. So this is a way to ease the training process. This is all happening automatically in your Azure Stack Hub. It's detecting the objects, it's labeling them, and it allows you to optimize that. So that's how partners are actually building the cars that some of us are driving today. So we've talked a lot about what can be done in these combinations, right? And as we go through these different combinations, we have the ability to address different verticals. What we have seen so far has been in the autonomous and autonomous systems vertical. One of the most exciting one is the retail vertical. And I invite you to go to the Intel retail demo that's at the hub right now. This is the picture of it. And it's also coming to a hub event near you if you happen to be watching this as a recording and you couldn't make it here. So let me tell you about this demo. It's very interesting because it's actually showing you the power of all of these components running together. So let's go back to our original design. What you're going to see here is, of course, you have the cloud to aggregate globally for all of these stores that you have. But now Azure Stack Hub is able to deliver line of business applications, basically stock management, and it's able to allow you to train and maintain a loyalty program, which I'll show you what that looks like, which is across multiple stores. Now, when you get into each store, you have Azure Stack Edge systems doing void detection, sentiment analysis, footfall, understanding what's happening in the store itself. And with the edge devices like the Surface Studio, you can also deliver interactions like people detection and speech detection. You get to see all of these when you go and visit our booth. So I highly encourage you to do that. And you can also even see how the IoT cameras are being connected there. But let's actually show it in action. How about that? So what I'm going to show you right now is a live feed. I have one of these tablet systems that are the ones that our personnel there have. So this is literally the view that an employee from the store will have. Now notice that this is really a superpowers tablet. It's giving me so much information about what's going on inside of the store, and it's actually showing me the stock. Look at the live feed. So right now, let's call them. So we just gave them the queue. So what they will do is they will actually remove one of these objects, and as the objects are being removed, we detect the void directly. That happened real time while we were here. that you will notice now that we have an inventory summary that gets updated real time, so you have all this information available for the store. You have sentiment analysis, a lot of information. But the experience doesn't end there. The experience actually continues, and you can actually go now into checkout. So I happen to be checking out for a hat, and you will notice that all the information has been collected there, and there's a loyalty program option here that I can sign up for. And then I get to actually give it a name, and this is optional always, and I get to register myself. Now, for the purpose of the demo, I have already done that, so let me show you what happens when I approach the kiosk. This is the experience when I first land into the store, and the system detects me. So it can actually identify me. And all this information, you will notice, was never sent to the cloud. This is all maintaining in Azure Stack Hub. Your face is not being stored anywhere. Your information is not at risk because it's all controlled within that experience. So that ability to deliver AI real time where you need them at the level of comfort that you have with data, it's actually what we're focusing on. So when we go through this, one of our main aspirations is to make this easy for you. So I'm pleased to announce that all of these hybrid patterns that you see here are now available to you, including the intelligent retail experience with all of those experiences. This is literally GitHub code, that's a GitHub repository where you have your code checked in. We give it to you for free. So you basically get to download it, run it on top of an Azure Stack Edge, run it on top of an Azure Stack Hub, run it on top of both, whatever fits your current need. You can start playing with it today. An example of the assets that you will receive is literally components like even the training notebook, some validation data, different versions of it, the entire architecture pipeline. You get to use this on your own. You get to test them. You get to be supported by us as well. And as you're deploying this in production, you also have a new set of patterns that we call foundation patterns that will help you integrate all of these services with your existing infrastructure. How do you get these systems connected to your network? How do you extend your data center capabilities? How do you have disaster recovery for all of these? Also as hybrid patterns that you can download with partner systems. Now, we've seen a lot of really cool demos. We've been super lucky. They've all worked. Yeah, we all knew they will work. But the reality is when you go to production, you're going to want a model that has been optimized. So when you do this, you really are working with a large partner ecosystem. So we have partners that are ready to support you with this in production. An example of them is Nomad Go. You can actually see this in action at the Intelligent Edge booth. You will see these tablets and small phones that are collecting surveys. They're collecting real-time insights into people going in and out of our booth. That's why you don't see us with clickers. You don't see us taking these phones to scan your badge. We are just gathering information, completely anonymized, just understanding how many people are coming, how long of time are they spending, very respectful of their privacy. Nomad Go has deployed these into restaurants in the United States, and it's actually now increasing their scope through Azure Stack Hub and soon Azure Stack Edge to any location where you can deploy these devices. Something similar happens with Neil Analytics, which actually is the company working with us on the Intel retail booth demo. So if you like any of those components, please go ahead, contact them. They're there. They can support you in production. They will stand by the models that you need and so on. Because we give you, of course, the patterns for free, but at production, you want a company that stands behind the models. Linker, which we showed you with that auto-labeling solution, is also available right now in Azure Stack Hub as well as the cloud. You get to deploy them from the marketplace, and they have some interesting announcements that they've made actually with self-driving companies. Finally, Mill5. You guys probably have seen videos by them on the Olympus use case. This is healthcare, completely revolutionizing the way that we look at imaging within the surgery room, understanding whether surgical rooms are ready or not, who's present. They're doing a lot of really interesting aspects. So this is some of the options that you have, but we actually have even more announcements. And let us close with reminding you what portions of those announcements you've seen and how they apply here.
Yeah, I just want to, lastly for Azure Stack Edge, we have a big show this week where we talked about lots of new things. Excuse me. So we have virtual machines coming, Kubernetes coming, high availability, GPU, ruggedization, and these things are just really designed to expand. So we launched Databox Edge, which has been renamed to Azure Stack Edge a year ago at Ignite. And in the last year, we've talked to lots of customers. We've discovered that the need for sort of a compute platform at the edge like this that can go in lots of different places is very strong. So we're really expanding all the sort of the compute platform options as well as the form factor options and hardware options. And that's all sort of coming soon stuff, but we wanted to make sure that everybody knows that those are things to sort of expand those options and make the platform sort of more flexible for everybody.
And for Azure Stack Hub, we have a lot of announcements. We announced GPU availability, N-series VMs, a bunch of new services that are moving into public preview, and also GA for the case of Kubernetes, and the patterns that I talked about. They are available online right now. And you can get all of this information and reach out to us just by following these links. So you get to sign up for the previews for Stack Edge. You get to sign up for our GPU preview on Stack Hub and access also all these components. A final shout out, since many of you are developers, we have a new ISV and SI program. We'll be talking more broadly about that. Basically, we're looking to enable you to deliver your solutions to the broader possible set of people in the right form factors. And you've seen that all the form factors that we're announcing. So if you have an interesting idea about an application you're creating, if you're looking for a reliable way to deliver your solution to the edge, please talk to us. We're going to be sticking around. And also, we have the people in the booth that can walk you through the program. So we'd like to take questions at this point. Please don't forget to give us.
The mic would be great. Go to the mic.
Go ahead.
Could you go to the mic? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have Azure Stack Development Kit running in my lab. How do you get access to some of the previews like IoT Hub? And you showed cognitive services up there.
Yeah, you just go in the previous slide. You see that we have, actually, I did not include this. Send us email to edgepartners@microsoft.com, and we will be able to give you access to that. AKS today, it's already running, so just update it. And for the cognitive services, we'll give you the details when you contact us as Edge Partners.
And IoT Hub, like I saw Dave Armour on, he had mentioned something on Twitter that he has IoT Hub running with his Azure Stack Development Kit.
Yeah, the SDK that you have, depending on how it's configured, it is a little bit more elaborate to put IoT Hub to run into that system. We can walk you through that.
We accept a good challenge.
Great. So then do send us an email and we'll be able to.
What's the approximate list price for the Azure Stack Edge?
The current Azure Stack Edge that has an FPGA in it, you actually don't purchase it. You order it from the Azure portal and you pay for it like as you go, like a VM or something. And we ship you a piece of hardware and it's $695 a month.
$695 a month.
$695 a month, but it's a server class machine with 20 Xeon cores, 128 gigs of RAM, 12 terabytes of SSD
If I'm a
storage.
consultant, I'm trying to sell this to my customer base. Do I have to go pay $695 a month?
So they would, it would just be the same way you would sell a like a virtual machine, right? Like they order it through the Azure portal, and it's just like on a normal Azure bill.
It works with CSP. So if you're a CSP, if you have a CSP agreement, it works exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
More questions? Anybody? Thank you so much for coming. Henry and I and Milan will be here for a few minutes if you have any questions for us up at the front. Have a great conference. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.